Hey everybody, this is David Cross. I'm back and I wanted to add another video to kind of add on to my first video. I kind of felt that it left it straggling a little bit, and I wanted to do a little bit more with that and leave a better example that shows more of a practical use about how that would be used in a kind of day-to-day fashion. I went ahead and did some of the pre-work here so I wouldn't have to kind of go through all of the steps. But effectively what I was thinking is when you assign an IP address to a device like a server, you typically want to have things like the default gateway defined, its DNS domain, perhaps some other information pulling out of the subnet details that will help you in the next part of the process or task or workflow even. And so I decided to add that capability to this using the simple scripts. And again, the Swagger is a testing utility. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of show you where I'm at with that and kind of walk through what I've added. So if you can recall back in the video, the first video, what we did initially was just set it up to simply give us an IP address out of a subnet by passing it the subnet name and the user login that's authenticated. We were assigning the IP and it just simply returned the result, and that was the end of the script. So I went ahead and decided to extend that capability, adding the next step of the process to go out and query the IP control database for the subnet and to pull back the subnet details that I can then extract the policy values for the default gateway and those other we think useful parameters that the administrators need. So here we go. So what I did effectively is I used one of the block, or what they call get block, APIs. So kind of going back to the Swagger interface and navigating into the block section this time. This block in IP control represents a network or a subnet, even an aggregate or supernet. And so we use different block functions for getting and importing, exporting for subnet details. So there is a specific API called getBlockByIPAddress, and because I was already passing the subnet address into the first script to assign the IP, I effectively already have that IP. So what you'll see in my script at least, and where we would be adding some functionality is we're going to go ahead and just assign that second parameter to the subnet, since we're going to go ahead and use it multiple times. Now, the second part of that is I went ahead and added the subnet itself that I was going to query, and I'm going to go ahead and do a different subnet that I'm going to go ahead and set up for this test. And again, the container applies. If there's an overlapping block, there's not. So I'm going to go ahead and move down to the status. And specifically what I want extracted is a deployed subnet. So a subnet is referenced to a deployed block. A aggregate is a supernet. A fully assigned is a subnet, but there's no IPs. But we want to look at the IP addresses so we can look at a deployed subnet. So that's the value there. Go ahead and give it a try. Of course, it's going to generate our curl, and this is the complete command that I could just paste this into the shell, and this will give me everything I need to export the block. So I would recommend doing that anyway, and I did, and created a get block sh script, which I'm actually editing elsewhere. All right, and in that get block, I went ahead and reassigned the curl value, which we just cut and paste into the script, and assigned it to a variable called block. And you'll notice that in this block sequence, it's not using an environment variable that I had set before. It's actually using the full token in the header, and that's okay for pasting this. And then it has the endpoint, and you'll notice that this particular endpoint uses URL parameters in a get function. So it's using a get header and get type to simply pass the subnet address and the status of deployed to pull back that block. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a real lazy way of doing this in shell script and just simply cat that variable, piping it into JQ, again, that command, and I'm going to pull out the subnet policies, and within that subnet policy, the default gateway, and likewise the forward domains. and more specifically just the first domain because it is a array value when I go back and look at the values. Okay, so the result of that is, and let's go back and look at the structure, and again, what I just mentioned we're going to extract. We're going to pull out some other information too in some of the script that I extended, such as the block address. We're going to pull the block size. We also are going to extract the container, and we're only going to extract the first container. And then we're going to look at going down in the subnet policies, the options, the DNS servers, and the forward domains, and so on. And so we're going to pull some of these values out and simplify this process for your administrator, right? So in the get block, let's just run that get block real quick. Since it is hard-coded, it should just grab something out of there. And we'll need to shell that. And it did pull out for the block, but our gateway didn't pull out for that particular block I was looking for. So let's go ahead and add that into the system. All right. So here, I want this to read 4.0 now, because I want to use a different subnet. All right. So this one here, I have the gateway, and it says now that that gateway is 4.1, and the domain is automate my IP. Okay, so that's what that particular get block script is going to do that I've extended to extract those values. Now, I kind of added that to my other script, my add next IP. So now I know that the block function works, the address works, I know those. So I added in that block function in the variable. And then again, I got lazy again and just typed these out or echoed the block, telling it to parse it out through JQ. And you'll notice that the block size here and container are part of the root JSON object, but the default gateway and forward domains are part of a subnet object type or object that has default gateway parameters within it. And then lastly, we're going to echo those results into more of a complete extract of a new IP address that's really more useful for the administrator. So I'm going to do that add next, do my TAC login again, and I'm going to specify the 4.0 subnet this time. And should have gotten something back. Looks like I got something misprinted on my null, but the rest of this works. So let me verify what my IP echoing is and why that is not working. Okay, I think I've got this figured out here. So I had a couple things set up wrong. So we're going to go back and take a look at a couple changes I made here just to make sure that everything is working. So number one is I chose a different subnet this time versus my last script, and I had a container that was listed in the import device that did not match the subnet that I was using, the new one I chose. So I removed that container as I didn't want to confuse the system, and that way I'd ensure I wasn't conflicting with that subnet, and also wanted to make sure that we were getting the right headers pulled back for the address. So I verified that, and what again we should have when we run this command is kind of a complete sentence of we've assigned the new IP address, and then it's allocated in the subnet, and then kind of the next string that's going out and pulling the subnet details. You know, here's the subnet size, and here's its container where the subnet resides. And then I have the default gateway and the DNS domain. And really now, if I wrap that around some type of communication process and someone asks for this, I could, again, tie in a host name or even an email script that could send this off and automate the delivery. So anyway, I just want to follow up with another quick video to show how that might be extended. And we're going to carry on from this and kind of use some of these new examples moving forward. Thanks again for your attention, and hope that helped.